This special presentation was produced in high definition by WEDU, Tampa, St. Petersburg, Sarasota.
Coming up next, both sides are lobbing attack ads at each other in that battle over Congressional District 13. The governor announces new spending projects that he hopes will help boost his appeal. 6 couples sue the state over the gay marriage ban. And USF researchers look at a widely cited study that shows red light cameras save lives, and they say not so fast. Political Insights next on Florida This Week.
From the WEDU studios, this is Florida This Week. And now, moderator Rob Lorai.
Welcome back. This week our panelists are Joe Gruters is chair of the Republican Party of Sarasota. Barry Edwards is a political strategist and a Democrat. Amy Hollifield is assistant managing editor of politics at the Tampa Bay Times. And William March is a political writer at the Tampa Tribune. Well, thank you for coming. It's great to have you here. The TV ad campaign for Congressional District 13 kicked into high gear this week with big ad buys by supporters of both major candidates. The pro-David Jolly ads attacked Democrat Alex Sink for being a tax and spend liberal.
Alex Sink supports Obamacare, even though 300,000 Floridians could lose their health insurance plans because of it. Sink has supported higher taxes, too. Higher property taxes, higher sales taxes, more taxes on water and TV. Alex Sink, another tax and spender Florida can't afford. The National Republican Congressional Committee is responsible for the content of this advertising.
The pro-Sink ads accuse Republican Jolly of being a Washington lobbyist.
I'm proud of the work that I've done.
Is Jolly proud of lobbying for special interests that received over $3 million in taxpayer-funded earmarks? Or the firm lobbying for hundreds of millions for a dictator in Pakistan as we face record debt? Lobbyist David Jolly's proud. We pay the price. The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee is responsible for the content of this advertising.
Aside from the ads, other issues are developing. Both candidates came out this week with their positions on flood insurance rates. Sink has a 5-point plan, including calling on Congress to roll back the rates. Jolly wants Congress to pass a federal disaster insurance program. The other big issue this week was a 2009 lobbying disclosure form, which indicated that David Jolly worked on Social Security reform on behalf of a conservative interest whose CEO expressed support for privatization. But Jolly's campaign denied he worked to privatize the program and said that the candidate supports preserving Social Security. So, Barry, let's start with the ads. You know, I'm interested in that David Jolly has not seemed to put out position ads giving us much about his background. He went right, he and his, the people on his side, his allies, have gone right on the attack. Sink put out this ad last week that kind of tells a little bit about who she is with her dad, and now she and her allies have gone on the attack. But is Jolly missing an opportunity to tell us who he is right now?
I want to put everything in context. First of all, my mama taught me that a half-truth is a full lie. And the ads that have gone out from the RNCC have been PolitiFact, which is a third-party group, I guess, that's owned by the Tampa Bay Times. Nonpartisan group. And they've called them half-truths.
Which ones?
The ads about Alex Sink raising the taxes and with the plane to the Bahamas and things like that.
Right.
And I think what these ads do is they go too far. They have a semblance of truth and then they exaggerate and take it out of context. As Alex Sink, did she ever support raising taxes? She did, but so did Ronald Reagan 9 times while he was president. So if you're going to blame her, blame the icon of the Republican Party. And I think for what David Jolly is probably trying to do, and I'm not advising his camp obviously, is he's trying to define Alex Sink. Because he had a primary, he's fairly well defined now, and she's not in Pinellas County. But I think he's missing an opportunity to define himself because she's going to start defining him as she did with the lobbyist ad.
And Joe, let me ask you about this. I mean, David Jolly is not putting out ads saying, hey, this is my family background, this is who I am, this is what I've done in Pinellas County. He's, they've gone straight to the attack, seeming to have skipped a step. Am I wrong?
I think David Jolly is running to win, and I think that his campaign reflects that. I think that he introduced himself during the primary campaign, and my response to Barry is shame on the Democrats for calling him a lobbyist for some Pakistani dictator when they know that's not accurate. I mean, David Jolly is a good guy. He's obviously a very accomplished lobbyist. He is an accomplished guy in D.C. He owns a house, unlike Alex Sink in the district, and I think he's going to be a great congressman.
Amy, what about this attack from the Sink side against Jolly, that he's a lobbyist and that he lobbied for dictator of Pakistan?
That attack ad on Jolly is worded pretty specifically because it references his former firm as lobbying for the former Pakistani dictator, not him. It's very clear that he didn't. There's no suggestion from that ad, and we found no evidence that he did. It's just a firm that he used to work for.
But they're twisting it by saying that. I mean, they do say the firm, but at the end of the day, when you're watching the ad, you think that he lobbied on behalf of some dictator, and that's wrong. And I think that these negative ads, all they do is distort the truth, and they prevent the voters from knowing the real truth about these candidates, and that's a major problem. And if we could ban all these negative ads, I would. But I think that both sides are at fault, and I think that the Alex Sink's ad is not portraying David Jolly fairly.
And I think some of that's true. And I think one of the things that we have a lot of data in the academic world about negative advertising. People do it because it works, but it doesn't work to persuade. Neither side is going to persuade more than 10, 11% of the Republicans or Democrats to cross over. It's just not going to happen. That'd be very aberrational. What they're trying to do is depress the Republicans. And I think that right now there's more enthusiasm, for whatever reason, because of Obamacare, with Republicans to turn out to vote. And I think the Jolly ads are aimed at depressing the Democratic turnout. Because they can depress that and depress Democratic-leaning independents, he has a much better chance of winning.
Wendy, let me ask you about this charge that Jolly is a Washington lobbyist. That seems to be the main line of attack that the Democrats and Alex Sink are making on Jolly. Why single out the professional lobbyists? I mean, what is that does that strike the public as a really negative thing to be these days?
Yes, it does, and it has for a long time. It's just fairly or not. It's just simply it's become a pejorative term. It's almost an insult to say lobbyist. Well, Jolly has been a lobbyist, and he has lobbied for profit-making companies. He's lobbied, or he's been associated with, as we pointed out, a firm that lobbied for a somewhat unsavory cause. But at the time that happened, Pakistan was a crucial ally of the United States in the war in Afghanistan.
So in other words, we were supporting the dictator in Pakistan.
We were supporting the dictator in Pakistan because he was helping us in Afghanistan. So, I mean, you can call it fair, you can call it unfair, but it's become almost a slur word, almost a pejorative word, and I think the Sink folks see that as their biggest single line of attack on Jolly.
Mm-hmm. You know, late in the week there was a discussion about Sink's side has pointed out that Jolly lobbied on behalf of stimulus programs that were championed by the Obama administration, and for a short time there was an ad up that was put out by the Jolly campaign that was criticizing Sink for supporting money on the stimulus program. The stimulus issue, Obamacare, these are going to be the big issues this time around. We've only got a few weeks before this is decided, right, Peter?
Unfortunately, most local elections are now nationalized, and one of the key indicators is the congressional generic ballot. When Amanda Murphy won up in Pasco County, it was a +8 generic ballot for the Democrats. Today, on the last George Washington University poll, which was done by Lake and I think it was Terrence Group, it was a +2 for the Republicans, and he actually had 2 more for Reality. So there's been a 12-point swing in the last 3 or 4 months.
This is a nationwide poll.
This is a nationwide poll. So the election is nationalized, and the big issue driving the downturn is the rollout of the Obamacare. But Alex Sink has been very clear on this. At Tiger Bay, she said it was a disaster and the administration failed us. So she has said that she would not have embraced the way it is, and it needs to be tweaked. So she has drawn a line that she's not a liberal Democrat and that she's a moderate Democrat. And one final thing I think what's interesting is there's going to be a debate done by the St. Pete Times next month, and there's going to be a third-party candidate in it who most polls are showing 4 to 5 points at the Libertarian. He could be the spoiler for one or the other of them.
Barry, the bottom line is, even though she may not have supported the rollout, she would have voted for Obamacare. And at the end of the day, this race is going to come down to if Alex Sink gets elected, she's going to vote for Nancy Pelosi as Speaker and support those liberal causes. So that's why these races are so national, because the importance of each individual seat for who becomes Speaker. Do you want John Boehner, or do you want Nancy Pelosi.
Okay. Well, Governor Rick Scott, who came into office as a budget cutter this week, announced several new spending programs. He wants $130 million to restore the Everglades in the upcoming budget. And this week he announced he would ask for $55 million to restore and protect Florida's vanishing springs. The governor was cheered by Republicans in the legislature, but environmentalists say it's still not enough. A Sierra Club leader called the springs proposal a drop in the bucket. Also Wednesday, environmentalists across the state held rallies at 15 different locations, including the state capitol, to sign a petition calling for a clean water declaration, saying Florida's long-term future depends on safe water. So, Wendy, is the governor, is this a belief that the governor has had all along since he was elected, that he wants to preserve and protect Florida's environment, or is he a newcomer to this issue?
If he's had that belief all along, he's never talked about it before. I've covered him since his campaign started in 2010. You have to wonder if Rick Scott or some of his advisors are telling him that the Rick Scott who won the governor's office in 2010 could not win it again in 2014, and if not, why not? What Scott is doing is he's trying to break the public perception of himself as being anti-education. He's putting money back into education. His critics say that he's only putting back less than what he cut out earlier. Now he's trying to put money back into protecting the environment, and again, his critics say the same, that what he's doing, what he's putting back is less than what he took out earlier. Ended a springs preservation and restoration program that had been started by Jeb Bush, basically gutted the water management districts that enforced some environmental regulations and oversaw the ending of the state's growth management agency.
Well, Joe, could the governor make the argument that I came into office with a bad economy, low state revenue, I had to cut these programs,
Exactly.
I had to be tough? Go ahead.
There's no question that when the governor took over, things were a mess in Tallahassee. There was a budget deficit. You know, we have to balance our budget here in the state of Florida, and he had to make some difficult decisions. But trying to spend money on projects for the environment is not totally new to the governor. Last year alone, I think he spent $30 million, or proposed $30 million spending for Lake Okeechobee, $90 million for some type of rebridging for Tamiami Trail down in Miami. Now this additional $130 million. I think the governor sees that improving the economy with some of the surplus budget that we have now is good for the economy. It's going to continue to help grow our state in many different ways, and I think he's doing exactly what he needs to do, not only to get reelected, but what's right for the state.
Barry, what's your take on that?
Rick Scott 2.0. He gets in, he has a failed policy, and then he polls every day. He has a great pollster, and he says, oh, I can't get reelected like this, so let me reinvent myself. And he's always trying to attack Charlie Crist for changing his opinions. The real thing is, why is he wedded to his bad decisions and policies that he's had for 4 years? It's not just $130 million for the Everglades. It's $55 million that he's asking for the springs, that the water district said we need $122 million. And this is water that's pollution that could affect everybody in Florida. But also in the Department of Environmental Protection, every year he's made budget cuts, every year, and he leaves staff positions vacant, and he's offering incentives to permit, for big developers to get permits, and offering incentives to the staff to grease them through. That's wrong.
Do you think that the money that the governor has proposed is a good idea?
I think it's a start, but in the church we call it a deathbed conversion, and this is a political deathbed conversion.
So, A.B., what do you make of the governor's positions on the environment these days? I mean, are voters likely to remember what he did in his first 2 or 3 years, or what he did in his last year?
The people who care about the environment certainly remember how it started, but there's an appreciation for the movement, but there's definitely a desire for much more change and much more money and much more commitment. But
how important is the environment to people who are not Democrats, like independents and Republicans? I mean, is the environment an important issue to voters here in Florida? Do people want to protect Florida's environment beyond the Democratic Party, which I assume is pretty closely aligned to the environmental camp?
This is Florida. That's
a given.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think you can go back to in the summer of 2011, there was a plan to put more camping in state parks, and they wanted to have RVs on Honeymoon Island, one of the most pristine places in Florida. And there was a huge public hearing, and like 1,000 people showed up in Dunedin, and right after that, the plan just went away. And I think you can start to look at, from that point, the governor sort of saying, yeah, wait a second, maybe I underestimated the people of Florida and how much they care about this issue. And and started to make some changes in his proposals.
All right. Well, 6 gay couples filed a lawsuit this week trying to overturn Florida's ban on same-sex marriage. The lawsuit was filed in Miami-Dade County by Equality Florida, a civil rights organization that works for fairness for the GLBT community. The lawsuit claims Florida's gay marriage ban violates the U.S. Constitution's guarantees of equal protection and due process. The couples, many of whom have children and have been together for years, say they see no reason to be forced to move out of the state to a state that permits same-sex marriage when they have built their lives here in Florida. In 2008, Florida voters put a ban on same-sex marriage into the state constitution. The ban says that in Florida, marriage is the legal union of only one man and one woman as husband and wife, and no other unions can be recognized. The Florida Family Policy Council, which led the push for the passage of the amendment, says the ban is popular, noting that it was adopted by 62% of voters that year. All right, Amy, talk about this. How significant is this lawsuit this time around?
It's certainly, I think, something that people were waiting for, expecting. This is what's happened since the Supreme Court ruled last summer. There's been lawsuits that have already happened, and most recently in Utah and Oklahoma. Judges have overturned bans in those states, in conservative states. And so now, Equality Florida has, sorted through 1,000 plaintiffs, found their perfect set, and we'll just have to see what happens. It's certainly something that public opinion has shifted on since the vote in 2008.
What about the point by the conservative group? They said, look, it's popular in Florida. It passed by 62% a few years ago in 2008.
That was 2008. That's a lot has happened since 2008. A lot of shifts have happened all across the country since 2008. I think some of the people in Florida, gay couples in Florida, even though there is a ban, have seen a benefit since the Supreme Court ruling in terms of the administration changing the rules so that for joint couples that were married in other states where gay marriage is legalized, who live in Florida, can file joint returns on their taxes this year because of the administration rules. So that's a start of some benefits that they don't have, which if they can fight and get some, some movement, there'll be a change. I don't think it's coming anytime soon, but it's interesting to see.
Sure.
Well, I think it's a generational change. And when the recent poll by the Pew Group, folks under 30, 65% approve of marriage equality. 30 to 49 is 54%, 50 to 64 is 45%, and over 65 is 39%. So as the World War II generation dies off, this is an inevitability. These are massive. I mean, people under 30, 2 out of 3. And so this is very bad news generationally for the Republican Party because the Democratic Party has embraced it. And it's not about sex. It's about people allowing people that love each other to get the same benefits. And can you imagine if you're the child of a gay couple and your parents can't get married, the shame there. But you also don't get the Social Security survivor benefits or any of the other protections that you do from the legal commitment. And I always believed in a strict reading of the Constitution. And this is protected under equal rights protection of the 14th Amendment. So I don't believe in instant replay when the call goes against you. I believe you either have instant replay all the time or not at all. And I think that's where the Republicans have another weakness here. They don't like what the Constitution
Joe, what do you
says.
say to that?
Very well, I agree what you say from the standpoint it's a generational change. Rather than a party ideology where the Republicans take one position, Democrats take one position, I think this is more generational, and I think that over time, I agree with you, it's inevitable for things to change, and I think that it's I don't know if I'd spend a lot of money defending it.
Yeah. Wendy, what's your take on this? In 2008, I think it was a pretty strong issue the other way against gay marriage. It's really swung. I think sometimes these issues are used to bring people out to the polls to vote, so that they'll show up and vote on candidates and other issues. And I think that's one of the reasons it was on the ballot in 2008. It doesn't seem to have the impact it did in 2008.
I can't explain what's caused this very rapid shift in public opinion. As somebody who lived through the civil rights movement, I was a lot younger and not really able to follow it. It seems to me that the public opinion in this issue has moved a lot faster than that. It's been an extremely rapid shift. The lawsuit here, the Florida lawsuit, essentially will argue that Antonin Scalia's dissent in last year's case, when the Supreme Court, when the U.S. Supreme Court last year threw out part of the federal gay marriage ban, left part of it standing, threw part of it out, Antonin Scalia dissented. And basically what Scalia said was that using this same argument, you could throw out any anti-gay marriage ban completely. Well, guess what? The people who are filing these lawsuits in Florida as well as Oklahoma, now Virginia's the next one coming, I think, they're taking Scalia's argument and using it as their argument that the bans should all be thrown out.
Mm-hmm. We may be jumping the gun a bit because we don't know what ultimately the courts are going to decide, the U.S. Supreme Court or anybody else. But Wendy, I got to ask you, I mean, you've been covering politics here in the state of Florida for a long time, and one of the most significant, powerful groups in the state of Florida has been Christian conservatives. And this is one of their issues, the ban on gay marriage. Is this evidence now that that group has, I mean, if the shift in public opinion is correct, is this evidence now that that group no longer wields the power it once had?
I think probably you can't avoid the conclusion that they've lost a degree of influence, but the death of the Christian conservative movement has occurred many, many times over the last several years. I even wrote a story about 3 or 4 years ago saying that rumors of the death of the Christian conservative movement were exaggerated.
So you had to quote Mark Twain on that one, yeah.
But they still draw Marco Rubio to the Florida Family Association's recent dinner, for example. They still draw the top speakers. They still draw the respect from conservatives and Republicans statewide. They have not gone away. They've not died.
All right, so don't count them out yet.
The problem with this issue for them is that every one of them has a gay person in their family or a friend, and it's just more ubiquitous now.
Well, 3 USF professors have published a study in the latest issue of Health, Behavior, and Policy Review, which shows previous studies about red light cameras saving lives may be wrong.
The previous study in 2011 claimed that red light cameras, also known as automated ticketing machines, saved lives nationwide. But it turns out that the study's results relied heavily on Phoenix, Arizona, which had an abnormally high rate of fatalities in the years before the cameras were installed. The number of deaths declined when the cameras were put in place, but USF researchers say the numbers in Phoenix would have declined anyway because the high fatality rate was so unusual. And when the Phoenix numbers were excluded from the review, there was no net benefit from the cameras. The USF study has implications for many cities in Florida that have installed the private cameras, most notably St. Petersburg, which has several new city council members who are skeptical about the benefits of the cameras.
Joe, a few years ago, there was a rush here in Florida to put red light cameras in a lot of cities. What do you think about that rush now? I mean,
it was obviously a mistake, and it was a knee-jerk reaction to these municipalities needing additional revenue. I mean, this USF study that came out has completely changed my opinion on red light cameras. And I did a complete 180 switch after reading it because, by reading that study in depth, you could tell that the previous studies that they analyzed it's like if you would have believed the tobacco company studies that came out and said tobacco is not healthy to you as an individual. This is clearly a double the negative benefit for the consumer from the standpoint you have an increased risk of a fine and an increased risk of getting into an accident. It's bad news for consumers, and I hope we repeal all red light cameras.
Barry, would you agree? Is this a death knell to red light cameras?
I think it's going to be much tougher. I know in St. Petersburg, 2 or 3 of the new city council members, the very thoughtful ones, Amy Foster, Darden Rice, are looking at changing the votes with the people that held those positions before them. I think what the public wants, though, is the truth. If you're doing it to make revenue, say we're doing it to make revenue. Don't take the timing on the yellow lights from 12 seconds to 10 seconds to 7 seconds or 5 seconds. But the sheriff's office here in Hillsborough lobbied heavily for them, and they said there were some more fender benders, but it took officers off of writing traffic tickets to do more serious work.
Okay. Well, before we go, we ask our panel members to tell us about one more major story from the past week. Barry, your other big story.
I think there is good news for the Democratic Party, despite things I've seen in the St. Pete Times lately.
Tampa Bay Times.
Tampa Bay Times, I'm sorry. Sean Shaw is a candidate over here for Betty Reed's seat, the son of a civil rights icon, Leander Shaw. He's going to report about $130,000 raised, more than any other Democrat for the Florida House. And he's also going to be the first to qualify by petition. He turned in his petitions this week. And he's the model. He went to Princeton, then he went to University of Florida. He's worked for the state, and now he works in the private sector for Merlin Law Group. I think you're going to find more and more attractive young men and women running for Florida's legislature because they see that there is light at the end of the tunnel now.
All right. Wendy, your other big story.
Well, Mike Salinero of the Tampa Tribune is going to report this weekend a story that could have significant long-term implications for the Tampa area. County Commissioner Mark Sharp, along with a couple of other commissioners, are asking for a proposal to revamp the governing structure of the Heartline and to reorient it from a buses-only kind of an agency to an agency that seeks to coordinate economic development with transportation, and to an agency that looks at other modes besides buses, that looks at bikes, trains, bike paths, trains, and other things. And if they succeed, they are encountering some opposition, but if they succeed, it could change the way mass transit is looked at.
Very interesting. Amy, your other big story?
Definitely the news today that they've gotten the verified signatures to get medical marijuana on the ballot, but now we just have to wait for the Florida Supreme Court to weigh in on the challenge to the ballot language.
Yeah, we have no idea what they're going to do. The Supreme Court is all right. Joe, your other big story?
And I'll say it's David Jolly's news of 2 consecutive polls shows him leading. You know, just a couple of weeks ago, people discounted him, thought he had no chance of winning, and here he is with the lead. With just a little bit of time left. I think that Jolly is going to be the big winner and surprise a lot of people.
All right, Joe, thanks a lot. Amy, thank you. Wendy, thank you. And Barry, thank you. And thank you for watching Florida This Week. We want to hear from you. You can record a comment on our toll-free line. It's 1-800-335-9338, or write us at ftw@wedu.org. Please like us also on Facebook. The show will be online on the wedu.org website beginning Monday morning. We'll see you next Friday night at 8:30 and Sunday afternoon at 12:30. And from all of us here at WEDU, have a great weekend.
Florida This Week is a production of WEDU, who is solely responsible for its content.